Problem number 5, rationalize our denominator here. In order to do that, we have to multiply top and bottom by something that will get the radical to cancel in our denominator. That is going to be the conjugate of 4 plus radical 7, which is 4 minus radical 7. We are going to, I always like to do the numerator first, so we will distribute in our numerator. So 5 times 4, we have 20. 5 times negative radical 7, just negative 5 radical 7. Call it good. In our denominator, we can FOIL. So our firsts, we get 16. Our outsides and insides are going to cancel, which is good. They're supposed to. And then our lasts, we have plus radical 7 times negative radical 7. That's just going to be negative regular 7. Our numerator stays 20 minus 5 radical 7. And our denominator, 16 minus 7, that is 9. So we're looking at multiple choice option C. Example 6, solve using square roots. So when we solve by square roots, we want to get everything onto the other side, away from our x. So we do that just like we solve linear equations, first by adding or subtracting and then dividing. So we're going to add 42 to both sides first. And then we are left with 2x squared equals 90. Divide both sides by 2. X squared equals 45. So then x equals the plus or minus square root of 45. You put in the square root, so you have to include the plus or minus. Radical 45 does have 9 for a factor, which is a perfect square. Whoops. So then I've got x equals plus or minus 3 radical 5. That is option C. Nope. A, sorry. Just kidding. Number 7, solve using square roots. So again, we're going to add 5 first to both sides. So I have 9x squared equals 612. Divide both sides by 9. X squared equals 68. I'm going to square root both sides. X equals the plus or minus square root of 68. 68 has a perfect factor of 4. So then x equals plus or minus 2. When you divide out 4, you get 17. So x equals plus or minus 2 root 17, D. Section 4.5, problem number 8. Solve using square roots. So we start by subtracting 10 from both sides. So I have 1/4 times x minus 3 squared equals 32. To get rid of that 1/4 out front, I like to multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which would be 4. So then you have x minus 3 quantity squared equals 32 times 4 is 128. We square root both sides. X minus 3 equals the plus or minus square root of 128. Now 128 has 64 for a factor, so then you can call that right-hand side the square root of 64 times 2, which would become 8 radical 2. So we have x minus 3 equals plus or minus 8 root 2. Add 3 to both sides, 3 plus or minus 8 radical 2. That looks like it is B. Number 9, the tallest building in the Czech Republic is the AZ Tower, I'm assuming, a skyscraper. The AZ Tower is 364.17 feet tall. Imagine that a cable wiring nail falls from the top of the tower. Using the formula found in section 4.5, determine the amount of time it will take for the nail to fall to the ground, round to 2 decimal places. Now, our formula from section 4.5 was h equals negative 16t squared plus h naught, where h is in feet and h naught is your initial height. Well, our initial height for this problem is going to be 364.17. And then we want to know how long it's going to take before it falls to the ground. The height at that point would be 0. So I want to solve 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 364.17. I like to have a positive leading coefficient, so I'm going to add 16t squared to both sides. So I have positive 16t squared equals 364.17. Divide both sides by 16. You find that t squared is about 22.706. And then we're going to square root both sides. Now, normally we take the plus or minus square root, but we're dealing, T stands for time in seconds. We can't have negative seconds. So we are looking at the positive square root of 22.706, which is approximately 4.77 seconds. B. Number 10, solve using square roots. Same idea, but now notice we're in section 4.6. In 4.6, we talked about imaginary numbers, so you can bet we're going to have an imaginary solution. So we want to add 8 to both sides to start off with. So I have negative 6 times u plus 5 squared equals 144. Divide both sides by negative 6. U plus 5 squared equals negative 24, and there it is. We are going to take the plus or minus square root of both sides and get u plus 5 equals plus or minus radical negative 24. Now, we like to take that negative out, so we'll call it I radical 24 instead. However, radical 24 has a perfect factor of 4, so really we're going to end with plus or minus I times 2 radical 6, and then just for the sake of standard form, we usually call it 2I radical 6. So one step kind of takes a couple steps in it. Then lastly, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, so u is negative 5 plus or minus 2I root 6. That looks like it's C. Number 11, solve or perform the following operation. I don't know where I got solve. So we really just combine our like terms. So we have 3 and 4 for our real parts. And 3 plus 4, which would give us 7. And then for our imaginary parts, we've got positive 6i, positive 5i, positive 2i. Combine all of those, we are going to get 13i. C.